Hi, I'm Anthony Marinelli, and today I'm ready to take you back to 1983, the film War Games, starring Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy. It was a John Badham film. It came after Blue Thunder, which I was fortunate enough to work on as well. And the composer was Arthur B. Rubenstein. And he was a great person and a great composer, and he gave Brian Banks and I our first break working on gigantic films at the time. And we were programming mostly the Synclavier and incorporating digital sounds for the first time in feature film. And then orchestra was sort of put on top of these basic tracks that were done with the Synclavier too, and using the sequencer in the Synclavier. And the sequencer is very similar to what is like today's DAW. So we could record multi-track sound, we could have multi-track recording basically with a recorder that has basic record, punch in, continue, start, stop, fast forward, rewind type functions. So it was really like a DAW, but better in a lot of ways to me because there was a button for everything. So it kind of resembled a transport on a 24-track tape machine, which was what was common back then. So we weren't learning like commands and what does like Control M mean or anything like that. It was all just you push the button and you could rewind or fast forward. So I want to show you the sequence that we did for the song called Video Fever from 1983. It was a song written by Arthur, and we were in a group called the Beepers, and the singer was Cynthia Morrow and Brian Banks and I, and we created this little quartet. We were the artists for two songs, History Lesson and Video Fever, on the soundtrack album to War Games. So I'm going to take the bootload disc out. This is the bootload disc from the Synclavier. You can see that, hopefully. And I'm going to replace it with a floppy disk that says War Games. And the first cue on here is History Lesson, Video Fever, and then a couple of cues on here that are labeled M22 and M32. That was the way you would label like a movie cue. And M would mean movie, and 22 would mean reel 2, Q2. So the next one, M32, would be reel 3, Q2. So back then, there were different reels. We didn't have the movie on video, so you would have to put a new reel on, and they were 20-minute double reels, so a movie would be about 5 or 6 reels to be 100 minutes up to 120 minutes. So it would take 6 reels maybe, and the last part of the movie would be in reel 6. And we had reel changes, and there was time to take breaks and all that during these reel changes, but that's how we labeled them. And I'm going to put this disc in to the floppy disk drive. So, and believe it or not, these things are completely reliable. Like, they're all playing perfectly. I'm accessing tons of these floppy disks that are in this box. I've got tons of these boxes, and they're referenced by project, and I have also like binders full of these things, and they're double backed up, so there's 2 copies of each one. So to find this cue, I can go to different drives. There's an internal hard drive, and then there's a floppy disk, and that's F0 on the screen. So you hear it? It talks to you a little bit, and now there's no more message on the screen, so it looks like it's loaded it into RAM. So when I play, I push start on the sequencer, and you should hear the sequence as it was. Pretty nice. All FM sounds, so it's FM synthesis, and all solo tracks. The bass. It's an FM bass sound. Track 2. That's that opening riff with the bass. Track 3, almost like a ska guitar. Track 4 is a double. Here's 3 and 4 together. Left, right. This sound is called Snowflakes. It's kind of like an icy little transition sound. I'm just going to run you through all the tracks. There's 10 tracks on this song. This is an interesting one. And now a feature on the Synclavier is I can just hit this button to select the keyboard, to select the timbre that you're hearing and have it be on the keyboard. So now I can just play that same sound on the keyboard. No MIDI. It actually is creating the sound live inside the Synclavier. And there's just a delayed vibrato on it, so it sounds like an effect that comes in the middle of the song. There's a little beeper sound. An explosion. And I can show you how that sound is made as well. And sound 10, right here. Here's sound 9. Let's get that one. A bass double, a little heavier bass. And then sound 10. Kind of like a piano, choppier sound. All very digital, all very video game type sounds. Please remember to like and subscribe these videos. It really helps us. We have a team here that I want to keep together, and we want to make more of them for you. So let me let you hear the sequence, but just for fun, and this is what we did back then too, I'm going to synchronize the Lindrum via the Doctor click. So what's happening is there's a click that's coming off of the Synclavier into the Doctor click. It's directly from the Synclavier to the Doctor click. The Doctor click takes that click and spits out a 48 clock to the Lindrum, and then the Lindrum will start. So I'll start those two buddies in just a second. And I'm processing the Lindrum a little bit through my pedals. So let's give it a listen. There's the snowflake sound. The opening sound comes back. There's a sound effect. That's the explosion that we were talking about. Sound effect again. And you can see the Synclavier counting. These are beats. Now we go to the bridge. That piano choppy sound comes in. Toggling that little ska guitar thing. There's the effect that I was talking about, the delayed vibrato. So there you go. To wrap this up, I think the important value of the Synclavier and the way that we did things back then was that you could sort of put your song together. You can create the sounds in the same instrument and basically sequence them and hear the basic arrangement that you wanted to use. We weren't like really arranging like after the fact, like today with a DAW, where you're sort of making mute mixes. We kind of knew the arrangement, and we would develop the arrangement inside here, and then often bounce the tracks to multi-tracks. So sometimes, and there were limited amounts of voices that you could play on the Synclavier. We had like a 32 voice system for a long time, and then later on you could get more voices. But even still, the more tracks you'd have and the more complex the sounds were, you might start running out of voices. So I would say we would bounce the bass, put it on multi-track, bounce this figure, put it on multi-track. And then we would add live instruments to it and also add effects as we were bouncing it. We'd run it through a signal chain that might have like EQ, some effects, even printing reverb, because we didn't have like instances of reverb, right? There would be one reverb in the studio and, you know, a compressor. And so we would lay them all down and get it all to sound good. And that was the song, you know. So think about incorporating these techniques into your workflow today. Even though you can do mute mixes and decide everything later, I think there's something good about having an arrangement from the beginning. You can always change it and like really work with that, and discovering FM sounds too that work really well with analog sounds. They're a lot more transparent sometimes and wider, you know, bigger, and then the analog sounds give you that point and attack. And then the live instruments, when you add that to this, drums, bass, guitar, those types of things, then you get a different level of articulation, more dynamics out of the sounds, and a feel. And you put it all together, and you know, that's what I think it's all about today, you know, because we want to be relevant to today, and we have all of these things at our fingertips. So put it together your way, you know, be the artist, even when you're just the arranger, or even when you're just the player, you know, be the artist, think innovatively, and think about the whole, and understand the song. And then when you put it together, you'll have, you know, sounds that will be iconic and great sounding songs, and you'll be a part of, you know, your own history. So hope you enjoyed, you know, this quick run through 1983 War Games Featured song in the movie Video Fever.